morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name's David Huxley from icare's mobile engagement team, coming to you from the far north coast of New South Wales, where I live. I'm on Bundjalung country, and I pay my respects to elders, people, and ancestors of this country where I'm based. Just want to pay my respects to the traditional custodians on the various lands on which we all work and meet today. Just want to kick off with a little bit of housekeeping, just to start off. Everyone's camera and microphone should be disabled so there'll be no interruptions, and the chat box is now going to be closed through the main part of the session. We will reopen the chat box towards the end to allow for feedback on the session and perhaps a few questions. And with regards to questions today, you know, we've had over 1,000 registrations for this webinar, which is an amazing turnout. We can't answer everyone's question quite simply, but we have included as many, I suppose, responses to the questions that were raised through the registration process through in the presentation today. So we'll be covering off as much as that as we can, and we will endeavour to answer a few questions at the end of the session for those that want to hang around, just in case we go over the half an hour. Look, the final bit of housekeeping is that the session is being recorded and will be made available on our webpage in 2 to 3 weeks sort of time. And for any brokers, any insurance brokers that may be attending, we will provide you with the code for your CPD points on the very final slide of the session. Time now to introduce my special guest speaker, and it's Mr. Craig McBride, who's the Manager of Premium Services at icare. And look, like myself, Craig is a pretty keen surfer, and we're actually very lucky to have Craig today, because normally he's off this time of year, traveling around overseas, around the world to exotic locations, following the sun to find that perfect uncrowded wave. How are you today, Craig?
Good, thanks, Hux. Yeah, thanks, mate. Thanks for that wrap. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's okay, mate. That's okay. Look, just want to call out that the session today is targeting New South Wales small employers, and just want to define what a small employer is in the New South Wales scheme. And they are employers whose average performance premium is $30,000 or less, and they're not part of a group of policies that exceed $30,000 in group average performance premium. So really the vast majority of employers in the scheme, approximately 93%, and over 300,000 odd employer policies that we're looking after today. So yeah, so what we'll do, Craig, we'll start with one of the most common questions that we do receive, and we receive this quite a few times in the through the registration process, is how are the workers' compensation industry rates, or WIC rates as we refer to them, just how are they set, mate?
Yeah, thanks, Hux. So the WIC rates, we have 535 WIC rates to be applied to all the 340,000 policyholders that we've got in New South Wales. So the rate that you get applied to is a reflection of the risk or the activity, the predominant business activity that you're conducting or undertaking. And we assess those rates every year, and our actuaries will look at worth of claims history for every employer in each specific WIC to work out what the claims costs have been, what the wages are, and what the premium paid has been, to work out what the percentage rate of wages needs to be paid to cover the cost of those claims. And that assessment is part of our premium filing that we have to submit to CIRA every year. We normally have to submit it by the end of March for all policies renewing by the end of on 30 June. So CIRA look at those rates once we've done that assessment. They have it peer reviewed by their actuaries, and they either not reject that or reject it, that filing, and they're the rates that as they are following that assessment, right, that get applied to every policy.
So how do we actually apply a rate to an individual business, Craig? Look, many businesses, they'll have staff performing all different roles, different activities, and this would probably vary in terms of risk. And just for example, if we take I picked up my car last week in a mechanic's workshop. They've got mechanics on the tools repairing cars, but they've also got, administration staff, like most businesses, who don't probably lift much more than a pen or the phone. Can we apply a different rate to those administration staff when compared to the mechanics in the workshop?
No, it's a question that we quite often get, Dave. Since 1987, it's been an industry-based scheme. Prior to 87, there was that allowance for people to declare admin staff, etc. But since 87, it's been what's your predominant business activity is. So if you're a smash repairer, you get the week that is for smash repairing, and everyone in your office has the same, your admin staff and your operational staff, for want of a better word, or the people doing the actual physical work. So that's how our system works. But everybody has that. So there's no one else, other businesses aren't allowed to split that in that way. For their admin staff, admin get associated to the predominant week. And to put it that way is that most policies only have a single week on it, and everybody in that business pays the same rate for the work. It's not an occupational system, it's an industry-based system. Yeah.
And like you said, it's been that way since 87, probably. Well, you've been around since 87, Craig, so certainly a long time.
Just about, yeah.
Just about. So look, I'll just explain that a little further. On the screen, on the slide, we can see there's a few images. Let's assume that's I got a bottle here. It's a plastic bottle manufacturing business, and we've got 5 snapshots there. We've got some guys in blue collars. Say they're admin staff. We've got someone on the floor operating a bit of machinery there. We've got a supervisor in a high-vis vest, as well as some warehousing and cleaning staff. So when we go to apply, the WIC rate, the industry rate for this very business, the industry rate would be plastic bottle manufacturing business, because that's what they're there to do. They're there to manufacture plastic bottles, but they're also going to sell them, of course. That's how they're going to make the money, but that they're there to manufacture those businesses. So we might move on now, because there are different categories of employers in New South Wales, and we're talking about small employers, but there are really the two main employers, and we're going to discuss how claims actually impact on employers' premium, as we get lots of questions about this, and there's lots of myths out there actually, Craig, when it comes to premium increases if an employer may experience a workplace injury. So, Craig, if a small employer submits a workers' compensation claim for a workplace injury, what is the impact on their premium?
If you're below that 30,000 threshold, there's no direct impact, or that claims cost isn't used to calculate your premium directly. Your premium is just based on the WIC rate that's applied to every employer in your industry in that WIC, and that's what it's paid. If you're above $30,000 though, that's when your own claims then play a role in the calculation of your premium. But for anybody below that $30,000 APP threshold, as long as you report the claim in time, you don't have to pay the excess. And if you don't have any time loss claims, you actually get a premium reduction as there as a safe employer reward. But there's no direct impact in the premium, your individual premium formula calculation of any claims that you've had.
True. So like today's audience, we've only invited small employers along, so we're assuming everyone on the call, should be below that mark. And look, we don't use direct claims experience in that premium calculation, and it's a really important point, Craig, because so many employers don't understand this, and they don't understand that claims won't increase their premium. And over the many years that I've been, and probably yourself in working in the scheme, spoken to so many employers that don't report claims through fear of maybe a premium hike or a fine, or they just don't know what to do. A lot of employers just don't know what to do if they have a workplace injury, but they don't do it. It's going to result in a number of potential consequences. The first thing is, the legislation says you're required to report an injury or workplace injury and submit a workers' compensation claim. But if you don't do it sort of immediately and you delay it, it could actually result in the injury getting worse for the worker. And they may not get the medical attention that they need straight up. It could mean they're out of pocket. They should, as they've got to pay for these costs themselves when they shouldn't, or they've got to take maybe sick leave or annual leave when really, under the policy, there's provision there for leave through workers' compensation, and can result in a breakdown in the relationship between the worker or the workers and the employer, and may have cultural impacts for a business, especially if other staff have then got to do a little bit more to cover staff that are off work for a long period of time. So, all right, what we're going to do now is we've spoken about the premiums a little bit. We haven't spoken on how the premiums are calculated. So why don't we look at the basics of premium calculation, Craig? And we use the example, the example on the screen here, Rick's Restaurant. Do you want to cover off on that?
Yeah, so this is the classic example of somebody's running a cafe or a restaurant and their annual wages are $1 million. So the rate that we've assessed is 2.25%. So that's calculates the base APP, or the average performance premium. So that's $22,500. That if Rick had claims, there's no impact on that base premium. From there, we have either a safe employer reward discount. There's a dust diseases levy that gets added in that every employer pays in New South Wales for all dust diseases. But if Rick has a claim, there's no direct impact on his premium from that calculation.
That's right. So, and that 2.25%, the rate there for cafes and restaurants, that's the rate from 30 June, from about a week's time. That's the current rate. And that's for every cafe, every restaurant all around New South Wales, regardless of, your location, where they are, or the size of the employer. It could be a large cafe or a large small restaurant. It's the one rate across the board. But the other thing is, if Rick did experience an injury, he's got 5 calendar days to submit that to avoid being charged an excess. And you can avoid that pretty easily. Just report the claim within 5 days of becoming aware. The excess, it's really there to encourage employers, the excess, to report claims as soon as possible, because there's lots of benefits from reporting claims early years. So it's really one incentive to report a claim. And look, there's some other premium incentives, Craig, we're going to cover off on now, which employers may or may not know about. And the first one is the payment discount. So I'll just change a slide. Why don't you talk us through what the payment discount is?
Yeah, so for small employers, so Rick's premium there was 22,500. If you pay that off in full in one hit, which I know it's a lot of money, but they get all small employers, so anyone below that 30,000 threshold, a payment in full discount of 5% applied. So you take 5% of that premium off when you pay it in full, if you can pay it in full at the beginning of your policy period. Yeah.
And you can pay it by installments as well. We're not going to charge you anymore. You won't get the discount, but we're not going to charge you. I don't know, just the other week I renewed my house insurance and it gone up that much. I said I'll pay by installments, and they actually loaded it. I don't know what, they loaded by a few percent to pay by installments. So we're not going to do that. You can pay by installments, not going to charge you anymore. But if you can pay it in full, within sort of a month, it can be a decent premium to pay, but you will get a 5% discount, and in this case $1,100 for Rick, so not a bad sort of saving there. But what about some other discounts?
Anyone's over $1,000, Dave, sorry mate, anyone that's over $1,000, they get 12 monthly installment options if they want to pay it by month.
That's right. And we also have now, we referenced it before, the Safer Employer Award, which is there to sort of reward good performing employers. Just want to maybe talk through the criteria there.
Yeah. So for a small employer, they can get a 7.5% reduction in that premium again. So on top of the 5%, if you paid it in full, there's another 7.5% available, but there's 3 qualifying criteria. So you have to have had a policy in place for at least 3 years prior to the renewal to get that 7.5%. No catastrophic claim charges in the 36 months, which is the 3-year period as well. And a catastrophic claim charge is from 30 June 2018, for fatality claims, there's a one-off contribution payment made for a fatality claim. If you're unfortunate enough to have someone suffer an injury that results in a fatality, you pay that one-off contribution. And also, what you can't have in that 3-year period is any claims for weekly benefits. So if someone just cuts their finger and goes to the doctor and doesn't have any time off, that's what we call a no weekly benefits claim, or a medical claim only. If it's the medical claims only, they don't affect your safe employer reward. But if there is weekly time off or weekly benefits payable, it will impact on your eligibility to get the safe employer reward. So the example there is that in that case, so Bill gets a further reduction of $1,687.50 if he's had meets all that 3 criteria.
Yeah, and I suppose if we look at the previous slide, the payment in full, that's $1,100. This is a further $1,700, so about $2,800 in front for Rick if he's got a good record and pays his premium in full, which is pretty significant amount of money when we're talking about small employers. And look, there's another discount actually, which is the apprentice discount, which we're going to get to now. Just want to explain what the apprentice discount is and how employers can obtain the apprentice discount.
So the apprentice discount's been around for a while. It's only applicable to apprentices engaged within specific trades or occupations, which is on our website. So in Rick's case, say an apprentice chef, if you have an apprentice that fits into one of those codes, any of the wages, so in that $1 million that Rick's got in wages, if he had 2 apprentices and he was paying them $100,000, that 2.25% of that $100,000 also gets taken off the APP once it's calculated. So you don't pay the APP premium on your apprentices' wages if they have one of those codes that they're employed under that meets our criteria. So the Training Services New South Wales approved contract with that apprentice in those designated trains and vocations. Yeah. But basically, your APP premium on those wages that you paid apprentices gets discounted off or removed off your final premium payable.
It's important, I suppose, there is provision when you complete your wage declarations to separate out the apprentice wages so that the underwriters know. Yeah, and they may contact you just to discuss that, just to make sure everything's correct and they've got the right figure in there and all the rest. But that'll come off your hindsight premium at the end of the year. So we might move on now to another more complicated topic, quite often misunderstood actually, this topic of contractors. And sometimes, Craig, a contractor may be deemed a worker in certain circumstances in New South Wales. And when determining if someone is a worker or a true contractor, it isn't always straightforward. And sometimes, as I mentioned, there may be a deemed worker for the purposes of workers' compensation in this state. What that means is some contractors who may be sole traders, they may have an ABN number, but they still might be covered under an employer's policy. So this will mean the employer is going to need to declare those payments, to those workers on their policy. So not always clear cut, black and white. Just want to explain what a subby may be a deemed worker and the difference between a true contractor and a deemed worker, and if there's any straightforward rules or tests that we can apply.
Yeah, I mean, as you've said, David, it's always a fairly hard way to define it, but workers are more likely to be directed by the employer. So they come in, you tell them what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and what they'll get paid to do it. They'll be required to carry out the actual work. They get paid on a time basis. They have the tools and materials supplied by the employer. They work exclusively for that employer to do that work. And they may be affected by the PAYG tax arrangements. A contractor, normally in this case, maybe, as you said, as a sole trader, but he's advertising his services in a particular trade or a skill that he has or she has. They would normally quote for the job if they come to the employer. So the employer says, bricklayers is one, I need bricks laid, and they'll give a quote, and they can make a profit over or under that quote, and they come in and do that, and they can sublet that work, or they have other employees themselves that come in and do the work with them. They might be a sole trader with an ABN, but they have 2 bricklayers that work for them, and they come in and do the job based on the quote that they've done. They supply their own tools and material, and they carry on that business. They might work for 2 weeks or 3 weeks with that one employer, then go and work with a different employer for the next 3 weeks, and then do 2 months with another employer. So throughout the year, they're working with various employers in their own trade or expertise to deliver those services for which they've quoted and are paid to do. Yeah, and they do it when they want to do it. Usually they say, I can fit you in, Dave, but I've got to do that job. I can't do it this week, I'll do it next week, as opposed to a direct worker who's, Dave, you tell him when you want them to work and how long they'll work for.
Yeah, that's right. So there's sort of those control tests about when they want to work.
Yeah.
They own the pricing, the quoting, that type of thing around the subject, around the contract. So I just want to add, actually, we're hosting another webinar on this very topic, contractors. From a real legal perspective, we're going to give a few case studies and tests and cover off on those tests again. In about a month's time, we're going to give you details at the end of the session as to when that is on and how employers can join that session, but it's on towards the end of July. So we're going to move forward. We're going to talk about now, we've got lots of questions around the sort of renewal process, wage declarations, and we got that through the registration for this webinar here. A few employers have said they had a few difficulties, not really sure what to do, don't understand how it works. So why don't you just run us through the policy renewal process and what employers can do to make this as seamless as possible?
So small employers, roughly about 6 to 5 weeks prior to your policy renewing. So if we work off a 30 June policy, around the middle of May, you're going to get your pre-renewal documentation sent out to you from us with how we're going to calculate your premium from 30 June going to the next 30th of June. It'll be populated with the wages or the estimated wages that we're going to use, the WIC rates that we're applying, and you have the opportunity, once you get that information, to look at the estimate and say, yep, that looks about right. It's in Rick's example, yep, I think I'll pay about $1 million again this year, and we're going to do it on $1 million again next year. That's a reasonable estimate. So once you get all of that information prior to renewal, you don't have to do anything unless you think, oh, that estimate's not right. I'm going to be reducing my workload this year. I'm, going to only open a cafe 5 days a week or 3 days a week. I can change my estimate. You can either contact us or you can come into our portal and update your wages to change the estimate. We would normally add what we call the wage price index every year on the renewal wages from last year. But if you haven't submitted your actual wages, so if we come in to renew 30 June 2025, which is due in 12 days, if you haven't submitted your actual wages for 30 June 23 to 24, we will add 30% to the estimated wages that were used in your renewal for 24-25. So when you've got that pre-renewal documentation for 25-26, if your actuals for 23-24 haven't been submitted, there'll be a loading of 30% on the estimate wages for 24-25 to do your 25-26 renewal. That's why it's important to submit your actual wages, because that helps us calculate a more accurate premium based on what you're actually paying. It's going to be more important going forward from 30 June 2026 because it's been approved by CIRA that if you haven't submitted your actual wages, that'll be another qualifying criteria for you to get your safe employer reward. So our filing, which has been not rejected by CIRA, has that in it, that from 30 June 26, if you have outstanding wage declarations for that policy period prior to that, you won't get your SER either, even if you have the other 3 qualifying criteria. But you can go into our portal and declare your wages now. It'll normally go through and be processed overnight, unless there's an issue with something that you might have put in that may flag that. It'll block it, and an underwriter will contact you to discuss what's happened.
Yeah, and the numbers on the screen there, if you have any trouble, with that 134422, if you have any issues with that. But like you said, so important. And one thing I'll just refer to there, Craig, is the wages definition manual, which is a document. So we're going to send an email to everyone on this webinar, Craig, in the next couple of days with a few links to a few different resources. One of those is the wages definition manual, which is there to really help you as employers know what needs to be declared in that wage declaration. But also there's some important information in there around, working directors, contractors, family trusts, other categories of potential workers as well, to help you and support you in knowing who should be covered and what you need to declare and the like. And
that's an important reference there, Dave, especially in regards to working directors, because lots of smaller businesses that are set up as proprietary limited companies, the director doesn't necessarily consider themselves to be a worker. But if you're performing normal employee duties, you are a worker. You're entitled to compensation if you get hurt, for a start, which is a good thing. So if you need to have a policy in place, and you get compensated if you do get hurt, but your wages or income that you draw from the business also have to be declared, as well as whoever you're paying as direct employees. Exactly. All that information to do that will be in your renewal documentation, such as your policy number, the period insurance, and most importantly, the customer reference code. So that's the code you use when you go into our portal to make those declarations, change your estimate, or submit your actual wages.
Very good, very good. All right, I'll just move on here. Actually, Craig, I get the screen to change. Look, we've been talking about premiums a lot. I just want to talk about claims just for a brief moment here, because even though small employers' premiums are not, increased on the back of a claim, there can still be a number of other impacts for a business, after a workplace injury, especially on business productivity. And this slide here just sort of shows you the difference between reporting a claim inside 5 days and outside of 5 days. This is the New South Wales average. This is across all of New South Wales. So if you report a claim within 5 days, the average time off after a workplace injury is 64 days. If you report that claim outside of 5 days, so there's a delay and the injury could get worse or whatever might happen, the average days off is 141 days. So it's pretty significant in terms of the difference. And when you look at the cost, you know, $33,000 is the average cost inside of 5 days compared to $58,000 outside of 5 days. So you can see there in the green box, report your claim within 5 days, and on average, workers get back to work 70 days quicker. Claims cost $25,000 less, and you might think, well, that's not impacting on my premium, but you know, the performance of all employers in your industry goes into your industry rate. So
yeah,
everyone's got a keen interest to manage their claims, report claims to reduce that impact, because that can actually indirectly reduce the overall WIC rate, industry rate that you've been charged. And it also can prevent you from saving an excess. We mentioned the excess a few times now. The excess is equal to 1 week's wage there. But when you look at that dial, there's a little dial on the right-hand side showing 59%. And there's a lot of work that can be done. Only 59% of claims in New South Wales are reported within 5 days. So, you know, over 40% are not reported within sort of that time frame that we want to, we hope to achieve the 5 day sort of turnaround, because there is some significant benefits. And we look at productivity. If you'll have someone off work, we look at Rick's example. Someone's off work, he runs a cafe, 77 days off. That's a lot of extra work or to cover, I suppose. A lot of other workers might need to do a little bit more. So look, what we're going to do now is we're just about at the end of the session here, Craig. I'm just going to run through the takeaways, sort of the key points of the session that we've spoken through, just sort of reinforce it. So pay your premium in full, Craig, and get that 5% discount. Don't forget to declare your apprentice wages on your form online, because they'll also be coming off premium as well. We want to help employers save money on their premium. Yep.
Sorry, I had to drop out of my screen then, Dave. I'm not sure what happened.
Oh no, it's all good. I'm just saying, make sure people declare the apprentices, but also for those employers who have got a good claims record, you will receive the Safe Employer Award. And actually, a lot of people ask us, how do we receive it? Do I need to claim it? No, it'll be automatic in your renewal. So look out for your renewal notice when it comes out in the coming weeks. Just to reinforce, small employers' direct claims costs are not used in your premium calculation, so it's not going to increase your premium there. Report a claim within 5 days and get a much quicker return to work. On average, it's 77 days. And also, report a claim within 5 days and don't pay that excess we've spoken about a few times here. Declare your wages on time. Make sure you're paying the correct premiums. You don't get any loading in coming years for not paying, not declaring your wages. And sometimes declaring your wages can result in a refund, a bit of a credit, because your wages are coming under. So make sure you are doing that. And look, the last point we haven't spoken to yet is to utilise the Small Business Hub, which is the one-stop shop. And I'll just quickly cover off on that now. And that's just on the screen here. There is a Small Business Hub, which we've created, which I suppose is a easy resource for any employers, mainly small employers, to obtain information about everything we're talking about today, policies and premiums, what to have a claim, but also upcoming events that we've got going on. We've got some more webinars and got a number of face-to-face sessions coming up. So you can also chat to an underwriter. There's a bit of a chat function there if you want to talk about your premium and policy, that type of thing. Look, you're going to get a link to this sent out in the email, but there's the QR code there as well. So before we go to questions, what we're going to do, we want to get some feedback on what you thought of the session here, because, you know, if you liked the session, we're just going to ask you one question, scale of 1 to 5. What did you thought? If you liked the session, we'd try to keep it half an hour and on point. You know, you'd probably give it a 4 or a 5. If you didn't get much out of it, you'd give it a 3. If it was a waste of time, you're probably not going to attend another one. You'd probably give it a 1 or a 2. But, you know, we want to get your feedback. If there's interest in more of these sessions, please let us know through this little poll here. But also, this is an opportunity now to give us some feedback in the chat. The chat should now be open. What you thought of the session, future topics. You can raise a few questions. We're going to answer a couple of questions just in a moment. The last thing I want to talk about is on the side there, on the right-hand side, you can see the upcoming sessions that we've got going on, part of the mobile engagement team. I mentioned the contractor session we have there coming up. It's a webinar on the 23rd of July. Then we've got a few face-to-face sessions in Nowra and Wollongong, a mental health forum, another webinar about interstate cross-border workers, and then a few more face-to-face sessions in Port Macquarie and Coffs. Now I can see people have sort of thrown their hands up. I'm just going to say, put your questions in the chat, because mics and cameras are turned off just to minimise interruptions. But while people do that, Craig, can you see any questions there that you can, that you want? Oh, sorry, jumped ahead. Not coming
yet.
through there. There is one there, actually. Do we have a session for larger employers? Actually, we do. Coming up at 11 o'clock today in half an hour. I don't know if we're able to, if Sheridan's there on the line or Mary can throw in the link to that. If people want to join us in half an hour to go through what this looks like for large employers, we do have a session coming up today. SDRs, I saw a question. Gee, the questions are going up very quickly. I don't know. Question about ABN. Oh, they're going so quick, Craig. If a contractor is under an ABN and they have work cover, do we need to include them in their declaration? Did you see that one, Craig?
If they have an ABN and they have a workers' compensation policy and they've provided you a distributor currency, that's just one of the good indicators that they're not a direct employee. They are a contractor, and that's evidence that you should keep with all your wage records to say that. And they would normally have a workers' comp policy because they have their own employees. So that's all that evidence as to why they aren't a deemed worker, but more a contractor. But keep all those documents, and you can ask those contractors when they come in for a copy of the document we did cover off is a certificate of currency, which is anybody that has a policy gets that with your renewal documentation. But if you need another one, you can ask for one and we'll send you one. And you should cite that it has the name of the person that you're engaging, whether it's a company, a sole trader, or a partnership, their ABN details, how many workers they've got, and what wages they're roughly paying for those workers that you've got. And you should try and reconcile that. So if it says they've got one employee and they're paying $100,000 in wages, and they come on the site and you can see that there's 10 people working for them, you should tell them what's going on. Your policy isn't reflective of what risk you've got. So you wouldn't have to declare that, but you should also check that they're adequately insured for the risks that they're bringing onto your site.
Yeah, and there's one here about premium declarations. We're saying here there's no difference between office staff and warehouse staff when we apply the premium, but they want to know if they have to separate the figures in the reporting. No, they don't just need to separate the figures of the different staff, what they're doing. Just give us the whole amount and the number of workers there. Yeah. Here's one here. If you're charged a 30% loading for not declaring actual wages in time, do you get a refund when you declare the actual wages for that period?
If that has happened before, and it's surprising how often it does happen that some employers just either through not attending our webinars, Dave, or just being aware that they're being loaded by 30%, and that when they do submit their actuals, yes, if that's not what your actual wages were, you will get a refund based on what your true wages were as opposed to what we renewed the premium on. So that's why it's vital or extremely important to submit your actual wages, because we only want to collect the right premium. We don't want more than what you should be paying or any less than what you should be paying. We just want the right premium.
Question about discount. Yes, safe employer reward discount should be automatically applied. If not, and you think you're entitled to it, just contact your underwriter. And this is what we like to encourage anyway, Craig. If anyone's got any questions they're not sure about, and we've got lots of questions coming through, which obviously not going to get to today, but we encourage you, give us a call, 134422, or use the chat function off our website to chat to an underwriter, to have a chat about your individual premium. They can look into the safe employer reward, that type of thing. Here's the 36-month premium discount continue year after year, or is it only every 3 years? No, it'll continue. That discount will continue each and every year while you are eligible to receive that, which means not having that period of 36 months of claims. So here's one. Any concerns with regards to working from home? Great question. We get this a lot. I'm currently at home myself today. Look, no concerns. As employers who have staff that maybe work from home, the home can still be deemed a workplace while your workers are performing duties for your business. So, they are still covered, I suppose. And in doing so, it can be difficult, but you need to make sure it is still a safe workplace. And so the work can be the workplace. workers are still covered whilst working from home there. What else we got there, Craig? Anything there you want to see? Lots of questions at the next session. We've got the link should be in the chat now. Anything else you can see we can grab before we finish up?
Just look, there was one there about asbestos for an electrician.
Yes, great
declaring
question.
asbestos
There is,
wages.
yep.
So that's
Yep.
There's an automatic dust disease levy attached to each WIC rate that CIRA sets. Our regulator sets the dust disease levies every year. But there's also a separate section in your wage declarations to declare if you have workers that are directly involved in dealing or handling asbestos. So obviously it's not a lot of trades or WIC codes that have that. You're talking about construction, building, demolition, etc. It's only for the time spent. So if the electrician example there, if they spent 2 hours pulling out a power board that had asbestos in it, it's whatever they were paid for that 2 hours where they were potentially exposed to the asbestos or directly handling the asbestos that you have to declare those wages for. And it's what they call as a D12, dust 12 level, and it's a high percentage rate. It's a 4% flat rate on those wages. But it's only for the time or the hours paid without directly handling and dealing with asbestos.
Handling asbestos. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Someone's asked, there's just a difference between small employer with regards to premium. So yeah, again, we'll just reinforce that. If you're paying $30,000 or less, you're deemed a small employer. There's a question here about the various claimants and injuries and making them redundant. We just encourage you to have a chat to the case manager who's managing the claim. We can't give sort of any claims advice here. The session starts at 11, not 11:30. Someone's asked about the 11:30 session. It starts at 11. The link should be in the chat. Sorry, the chat's moved up so quick. Maybe we can post that link back in there, share it in just for those who are hanging on the call. Link. Automatically replied yes. Anything else you see, Craig, that we can?
There's some more policy specific stuff there.
Safe Employer Award, yep, that's been come through a few times here. Due dates for the wage declarations here, you've got 4 months to complete your wage declaration from the expiry of your policy. So if your policy falls due on 30 June, you've got to the end of October to sort of get that done. So it should be plenty of time here to get
There's
that done.
one question there from someone who's got an August renewal date. So it'll be the end of August.
Okay.
And so it goes from 31 to... You still get your discount when you declare your actual wages. It doesn't have to be what you paid from 30. You'll be declaring actual wages paid from 31st of August to 31st of August. It's when you've made that declaration, you still get your discount. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. All right. Well, anything else? Let's see here.
And sorry, so that 31st of August, you also get 4 months from that date. So it takes you to the end of December to submit your actual wages. You don't have to submit them by 30 June. That was I think that was the main question.
Yeah. One question here said the invite said 10 a.m. start. Yeah, we kicked off at 10, but the session is being recorded. So we are recording the session. It's going to be made available on our website. So you're going to get a link to all this information if you need to rewatch it or review it, that type of thing. And yeah, the next session was deemed sold out. Lots of people want to come to the next session, but the link's there, so you should be able to join very soon when we kick that off. So, all right. Well, look, Craig, we've got to prepare for the next session. You and I got to freshen up.
Yep.
There's lots of questions here. Again, what we'll do is encourage you to chat to your underwriter. You've been given the number there to call, or there's ways to send through an online chat through the web page. You're going to get an email with all the information we've spoken about today and various links and the like. So hopefully it's help and support your business. And for those that are joining us at 11 o'clock, we haven't kicked that off just yet. We're going to open up that session in a moment, but we will kick off at 11 o'clock in about 20 minutes time. So, all right. Thanks very much, Craig. And look forward to, thanks everyone for joining us as well. And look forward to those seeing you in about 20 minutes time. All right. Thank you very much.
See you guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.